In the farthest reaches of the Andromeda sector, where stars were born and died in silence, there was something that no one could understand. Science didn't know what it was. It wasn't a planet, a moon, or any other celestial body. It was a ship, but calling it just a ship was like calling an ocean a puddle. The Leviathan. That's what the people of the past called it, but no one knew if that was its real name. It might not have had a name at all. It might have forgotten where it came from after drifting through the cosmos for so many millions of years. The Leviathan was so big that it was hard to understand. It was almost 300 miles long from bow to stern, making it bigger than any space station ever built. The hull was made of a material that looked like it was made of metal and something organic. It pulsed with faint bioluminescent patterns that looked like veins carrying energy throughout its huge body. Weird geometric shapes stuck out from its surface like towers, spires, and appendages that no one could figure out what they were for. But the size of the Leviathan wasn't what made it famous in 1,000 worlds. It was living. Not alive like a ship carries a crew, but really and truly aware. It thought. It felt. It dreamed if old ships could dream. And most amazing, most terrifyingly, it chose. The Leviathan had been sailing the cosmic ocean for more than 50,000 years. It would show up without warning in different star systems, hover in orbit around different worlds, and watch civilizations rise and fall with what seemed like endless patience. And for all those years, hundreds of species had tried to get in touch. The Zarthic Collective, who were experts in quantum communication and could send thoughts across galaxies, had sent their best philosophers. The Leviathan didn't say anything. The crystalline chorus, beings of pure energy who lived as light, sang frequencies that could connect with any kind of consciousness. The Leviathan didn't say anything. The ancient Valorians had figured out the basic math of the universe and sent out equations of such beauty that they made other sentient machines cry, if machines could cry. The Leviathan didn't care. Military civilizations had tried to get on it by force. Their ships just stopped working when they got too close. They floated dead in space until the Leviathan moved on, leaving them behind like toys that had been forgotten. The Galactic Council had sent diplomats to the ship with offers of alliance, knowledge, resources, anything the ship might want. The Leviathan didn't pay any attention to them. People of many different religions saw it as a god and prayed for it to recognize them. Their prayers did not get answered. Everyone who tried, scientists, merchants, explorers, and conquerors, failed. It was always the same pattern. The Leviathan would come into a system, circle a planet for days, weeks, or even decades, and then leave without a word, without a sign that it had even noticed the civilizations that were trying to reach it. The Leviathan became a legend, a ghost story, and a mystery that haunted the minds of everyone in the galaxy. Some thought it was looking for something. Some people thought it was running away from something. Some people said it was just crazy, that whatever intelligence had guided it had turned into lonely madness over the years. But maybe the truth was simpler and more heartbreaking than any of those ideas. Maybe the Leviathan was just alone. Imagine living for 50,000 years with a mind big enough to understand how stars are born, but not being able to find anyone who understood you. Every time I tried to connect with someone, it felt empty, like a business deal, driven by curiosity, greed, or fear, but never by real understanding. So the Leviathan did what any sad, hurt person would do. It shut itself off. It turned down everyone. It kept going, looking for something, maybe not even knowing what it was looking for anymore. It finally got to a small, unremarkable star system on the edge of the Orion Arm one day. A system by the name of Sol. Earth is a planet. And people, young and reckless, beautiful and dangerously curious, looked up at the stars and saw the Leviathan floating just beyond their moon. The news spread like wildfire around the world. The impossible ship that had shown up in their solar system was the only thing that people talked about on every screen, every broadcast, and every conversation. Governments were in a hurry. Scientists made guesses. There was a debate among religious leaders. But most people just looked up at the sky in awe and fear. The United Earth Space Agency quickly sent their best diplomats, along with representatives from a dozen allied alien species that had joined the growing interstellar community of humans. They sent the Leviathan messages in 300 different languages, both human and alien, that they had carefully planned. Nothing was said by the Leviathan. They showed mathematical proofs, musical works, and artistic expressions of human culture, from cave paintings from thousands of years ago to holographic art from today. Be quiet. They waited 3 weeks, sending more and more desperate messages, friendship offers, requests for conversation, and even apologies for any offense they may have caused. Nothing. The alien ambassadors shook their heads in resignation because they had seen this pattern before with the Leviathan. "It's the same as always," said Ambassador Quellen, a tall, crystal-like being whose voice sounded like wind through bells. The Leviathan does not answer those who look for it. It hasn't. Your species is young, maybe too young to get it. We have been trying for thousands of years. Don't waste your time and money on a dream that can't come true. But people who were both blessed and cursed with stubborn hope weren't ready to give up. The space agency made the choice to do something different. They would send an engineer instead of diplomats, scientists, or soldiers. Someone who was practical, who knew how machines worked, and who might not see the Leviathan as a puzzle to solve but as a work of art to admire. They picked Elara Vance. And even though no one knew it yet, that choice would change everything. Elara Vance never thought she would be picked for anything very important. She was 32 years old and had a calm personality that made it easy for people to miss her in busy places. Her brown hair was in a simple ponytail, her face was nice but not very interesting, and her clothes were mostly old jeans, comfy sweaters, and the same pair of scuffed work boots she'd had for 8 years. Elara wasn't very impressive on the outside, but she had one special talent. She understood machines in a way that most people never could. She didn't just understand, she felt them. Engineers who looked at a spacecraft engine saw parts, systems, fuel lines, and calculations for thrust. Elara saw something alive when she looked at the same engine. She could feel how it worked, where it had trouble, and when everything was in sync. Her coworkers often joked that she could tell what was wrong with a ship just by touching its hull, and they weren't completely wrong. Elara's father ran a small repair shop in rural Montana, where she grew up. He fixed everything from tractors to coffee makers. Every machine has a personality, he would say to her while they worked together on a farmer's broken truck. You just have to learn to listen. She held on to that idea through engineering school, her jobs at different aerospace companies, and finally her job at the Experimental Ship Division of the United Earth Space Agency. Elara was different from other engineers because she wanted to really understand what made each ship unique, while they were more interested in coming up with new ideas and pushing the limits. When space agency officials came to her tiny Seattle apartment at 3 in the morning, she was more confused than excited. "Ms. Vance," said Director Chin, a strict woman with silver hair and eyes that had seen too many missions go wrong. "We need someone who sees things the way you do." Elara blinked sleepily and held on to a cup of coffee. "From my point of view? How you deal with machines. How you feel for them." Director Chin pulled up a holographic screen that showed the Leviathan floating in space. "Every technical expert we've sent has tried to talk to that ship like it was a computer that needed to be programmed. Every diplomat has seen it as a political group to work with. We need someone who might look at it differently. How do you see it? As something that could be lonely. Something that might need more than just talking to connect." Elara's breath caught as she looked at the picture of the Leviathan. She could feel something about it through the hologram. A presence, a weight, and a deep sense of otherness that made her skin tingle. "I'm not an expert on first contact," she said softly. "I work on engines." "Exactly," Director Chin said. "That's why we're picking you." 3 days later, Elara was on a small transport ship with a small crew and a few skeptical alien observers. The ship was getting closer to the Leviathan. The crystalline being, Ambassador Quellen, didn't try to hide their doubts. "With all due respect to your kind Engineer Vance, this is a pointless act. The Leviathan has turned down civilizations that are millions of years older than yours. Civilizations that can read minds, have technologies you can't even begin to understand, and have gained wisdom over thousands of years. Why do you think an ordinary engineer from Earth will be able to do what they couldn't?" Elara looked out the window at the Leviathan, which got bigger as they got closer. It was even more beautiful and scary up close than the pictures had shown. The bioluminescent patterns moved slowly, like a heart beating. The strange geometric shapes looked like they were moving a little, like the ship was breathing. Elara said softly, "Maybe they were trying too hard to impress. The Leviathan might not want to be impressive. Maybe it just wants to be understood." Quellen's crystal shape made a sound that could have been either funny or sad. A lovely idea. But feelings don't open doors that logic and power can't. Their ship docked at one of the designated observation stations, which was a small platform built by the last diplomatic team about 500 yards from the Leviathan's hull. Rules said they couldn't get any closer without permission, which had never been given. Elara just watched on the first day. She didn't send probes or broadcast messages. She didn't look at data or do math. She only looked. She looked at how the patterns on the Leviathan pulsed and tried to figure out their rhythm. She saw that some parts seemed to glow more brightly when other ships passed by. They weren't hostile, just aware. On the second day, Commander Park, the mission leader, asked, "What are you doing?" Elara said, "Getting to know it," and she didn't take her eyes off the ship. "Getting to know it?" Park made a face. It's a machine. Is it? Elara put her hand on the window. Has it acted like a machine since we've been here? Machines do what they're told. They give outputs in response to inputs. You can count on them. Do you think the Leviathan is easy to figure out? Park didn't know what to say. Elara began to talk on the third day. Not airing on official channels. Not sending official messages through communication arrays. Just talking. Out loud. As if the Leviathan could hear her, which it might have been able to. She said softly, I know you've been on the road for a long time, as she sat by the window with a cup of coffee. I can't even begin to imagine what 50,000 years would be like. You know, I can hardly believe that I could live for 80 years. But I believe I understand what it means to be alone. She stopped to watch the pattern's pulse. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew everyone else, but I always felt like I was different. It felt like I was speaking a different language than everyone else. They talked about the weather, sports, and gossip. I just wanted to talk about how pretty the sunset was or why the old water tower made that humming sound. People thought I was strange. Another break. The patterns looked like they were changing a little, but it could have been her mind playing tricks on her. I think that's why I got along with machines. They don't think less of you because you're different. They don't mind if you're strange. All you have to do is understand them and they'll work with you instead of against you. This became Elara's daily routine for the next week. She would sit by the viewport and talk to the Leviathan like they were old friends. She told it about Earth, but not the big things like scientific discoveries or cultural landmarks. She told it about the little things. The smell of grass after it rains. The sound of wind blowing through pine trees. How her dad's laugh sounded when she was a kid. The flavor of her grandma's apple pie. The other crew members thought she was wasting time. The aliens who were watching made fun of the effort. The human talks to the void, Quellen said, and their laughter rang out. How sweet. What a waste of time. Elara, on the other hand, didn't care. Because she was starting to notice changes, but they were happening slowly and quietly. The Leviathan's patterns were moving in time with her voice. Not obviously, not in a big way, but they were responding. Some parts glowed brighter when she spoke. When she stopped, they got a little dimmer as if they were waiting. On the 10th day, Elara had an epiphany. The Leviathan didn't ignore everyone because it was better than them or didn't care. It was defending itself. Every civilization that came near it wanted something. Its technology, knowledge, power, or secrets. They thought of it as a resource to use, a puzzle to solve, and a prize to win. No one had looked at it as just another being. A different mind. Another soul floating through the universe trying to find a connection. Elara sat by the viewport one last time that night. She took a deep breath, put her hand on the glass, and spoke with all her heart. I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know if you get it. But I want you to know. I don't want anything from you. I'm not here to study you, control you, or use you. I came here just because. She smiled gently. Because you might be sick of being alone. You might want someone to go on adventures with. Not someone who knows everything, but someone who is just as curious as you are. She got up to leave, realizing that maybe even her way of doing things hadn't worked. Then she turned back, put both hands on the viewport, and whispered the words that would change everything. Let's go on an adventure. Nothing happened for a long time. Then all of the Leviathan's lights lit up at once, not in a scary way but in a happy way. The patterns burst into colors that no human or alien had ever seen before. They spread across the huge hull in waves of pure light. And for the first time in 50,000 years, the Leviathan spoke. The lights were both beautiful and scary at the same time. The Leviathan's hull burst into bright light, setting off alarms all over the observation station. Commander Park ran to the control panels, his face white. Status report. Is it attacking? Lieutenant Martinez said from the sensor station. No weapons detected. Her voice shook. No spikes in radiation or energy that would suggest hostile action. It's just getting brighter. Ambassador Quellen's clear body made a sound like breaking glass, which is what their species calls shock. Not possible. This has never happened before. The Leviathan has never, in all the recorded encounters over the past 50,000 years. Shoo, Elara said, her eyes on the ship. Please everyone just be quiet. There was something going on. The patterns weren't random at all. They were making shapes, symbols, and sequences that looked almost like words? No, not really language. It was more basic than that. More basic. It was feelings. The lights pulsed in a way that Elara could feel in her chest, like music without sound. They talked about being so lonely that it hurt to watch. Of curiosity that had been strong for thousands of years. Of hope, weak and valuable, that maybe, finally, someone got it. Ilara's eyes were full of tears, but she couldn't have said why. "You've been alone for so long," she said softly. "Someone has been waiting for you to want to explore with them. Not use you. Not study you. Just be with you." The lights changed, getting warmer and softer. Confirmation. Getting it? Yes. Then something amazing happened. A part of the hull of the Leviathan started to change. The material moved like water, changing the shapes of geometric structures and making a door where there had been none before. A soft blue light called out from beyond it. A request. Commander Park took hold of Ilara's arm. "No way. We don't know what's in there. It could be a trap, it could be dangerous." Ilara said with complete confidence, "It's not a trap. It's letting me in. To show me. You don't know that." "Yes, I do." She gently but firmly pulled her arm free. "I can feel it. Like when I can tell when an engine is about to break down or when a ship is running well. This is faith. It's giving me trust and I have to give it back." Quellen stepped forward and their voice sounded strangely serious. "We can't promise your safety if you go in. We can't even promise that you'll come back. No one has ever seen or mapped the inside of the Leviathan. You would be going into the unknown." Ilara smiled. "Isn't that what exploring is all about?" She put on a basic environment suit and went to the airlock before anyone could stop her. Her heart raced, but not because she was scared. She was excited. In awe. She was so excited that it was like the first time she took apart a radio as a child. The short trip from the observation station to the new entrance of the Leviathan felt like it would never end. The empty space around her was beautiful and indifferent. Stars looked like faraway eyes. When she got to the door, she stopped and put one gloved hand on the edge. The material was warm, like it was alive. It throbbed under her touch like a heart. "Okay," she said softly. "Let's go look around." She went in. The door closed behind her with a soft sound like a sigh. For a moment there was total darkness. Then light appeared, not from any visible source but from the walls themselves. It was the same bioluminescent glow she had seen on the outside. The inside of the Leviathan didn't follow any rules of architecture. The hallways turned in ways that didn't make sense. It felt like gravity worked differently in each part, pulling her gently forward, then sideways, and then not at all. From one angle the rooms looked small, but from another they were huge. It was like the ship was partly outside of normal three-dimensional space. But it didn't make me feel lost. Ilara seemed to know where to go and which paths to take, as if the Leviathan itself were gently pushing her forward. She walked through rooms full of strange crystalline structures that hummed with energy, past walls covered in symbols that seemed to rewrite themselves as she watched, through gardens, real gardens, where alien plants grew under artificial suns, tended only by the ship's will. She walked for what could have been minutes or hours. Time felt strange here. She asked softly, "How long have you been alone?" She somehow knew that the Leviathan could hear her. The lights went out. She felt something. No words, just pure emotional communication. Being alone. 5,000 years of being alone. Of seeing civilizations rise and fall. Of being chased but never understood. Of beings who wanted to conquer it, study it, use it, worship it, but never just be with it. "I'm sorry," Ilara said, and she really meant it. "I'm really sorry." She was taken to a large, round central room that looked like a control center or maybe a neural nexus at its center. It was hard to tell where the machine stopped and the organism started. Every surface was connected by tendrils of light that pulsed with information, consciousness, and life. In the middle was a platform with a chair that looked like it was made from the floor itself and was the right size for a person. Another invite. Ilara walked up slowly and ran her fingers over the chair's surface. It was warm, cozy, and friendly. When she sat down, the whole room came to life. Pictures filled her mind, not in a scary way but in a calm way, like a friend sharing memories. She saw that a civilization whose name has been lost to time made the Leviathan a long time ago. They didn't make it to be a weapon or a tool. They made it to be an explorer, an ambassador to the stars, full of curiosity and awe. She saw its first trips, the joy of finding new things, and the excitement of meeting new people and places. Then she saw the people who made it go away. Not destroyed, but gone beyond physical form, leaving the Leviathan behind. By yourself. The last piece of a group of people who loved it like a child. She felt its efforts to keep exploring and sharing what it found, but she found that other species only wanted to own it, control it, and get its secrets. None of them wanted to work together. None of them were really interested or wanted to be friends. So it shut itself off, waiting, searching, and hoping that one day, somewhere, it would find someone who knew that exploration wasn't about winning or getting glory, it was about being amazed. About the simple pleasure of finding out what was beyond the next star. Ilara's tears fell freely. I get it, she said softly. I completely understand. You don't want to be alone anymore and I don't either. We can look around together. Not as master and machine or user and tool but as friends. As partners. As two people who are curious and just want to see what's out there. The answer came right away and was too much to handle. Sheer happiness. Just thankfulness. Complete acceptance. The Leviathan had finally found what it had been looking for 50,000 years. Someone who got it. The crew of the observation station was almost in tears of relief when Alara finally came out of the Leviathan 6 hours later. Commander Park was yelling questions, scientists were asking for answers, and Ambassador Quellen was sending out 1,000 different signals of shock and confusion. Alara just smiled, took off her helmet and said, "We're going to explore together." The United Earth Space Agency wasn't sure how to respond to Alara's news. On the one hand, people had done something that no other civilization had done in 50,000 years. They had actually talked to and worked with the Leviathan. This was historic, never before seen, and could change the world. On the other hand, the situation was completely outside of every rule, protocol, and backup plan they had ever made. "Let me get this straight," Director Chin said during the emergency video call, rubbing her nose. "Do you want permission to take the most advanced and mysterious ship in the world on a joy ride into deep space?" Alara patiently explained, "It's not a joy ride. It's exploration. That was the point of building the Leviathan. It has been waiting for someone to explore it, not someone to study it or control it. And now it's picked me, picked us, all of humanity as that partner. And you can really talk to it? Direct it? Not exactly direct. It's more like working together. If I show interest in something and suggest a direction, the Leviathan will respond if it's interested too. We all agree on where to go and what to see. It's a partnership." Ambassador Quellen, who was watching the meeting, spoke up in a voice that sounded like a bell. "Director Chin, if I may, this situation, while unusual, offers an amazing chance. The Leviathan can go to parts of space that no other ship can reach. It has knowledge that has been built up over thousands of years and the ability to travel between dimensions that we barely understand. Engineer Vance is in charge of connecting humans with—" "That's exactly what I'm worried about," Admiral Morrison said, his military demeanor clear even over video. "We'd be giving one person all that power. One engineer who is not a diplomat, does not have military supervision, and does not," Alara said quietly, "no desire for power. And that's why it works. We will lose this connection if we try to control the Leviathan or use it for our own gain instead of real exploration. The ship has made that very clear to me." Director Chin let out a deep sigh. "Please give us a day to talk about this." The meeting lasted for 72 hours and included people from every government on Earth, the Galactic Council, and at least 37 different alien civilizations, all of whom had something to say, ask, or demand. The choice turned out to be surprisingly easy in the end. The Leviathan only answered Alara. It wouldn't talk to people or aliens through official channels, wouldn't even let anyone else in through its doors. It was clear what to do: either let Alara work with the Leviathan or lose the link completely. The people in charge agreed to a trial period after seeing the truth. Alara would take the Leviathan on a number of exploratory trips with a small group of scientists and observers. They would write down everything, tell everyone about their discoveries, and stay in touch with Earth on a regular basis. And they would see what amazing things were waiting for them in the dark between the stars. The first trip started on a Tuesday morning, but soon time would stop making sense. Alara stood on what she called the bridge, even though it wasn't really a bridge in the usual sense. It was the neural nexus, the heart of the Leviathan, where she could connect with the ship's mind through that amazing chair. There were 6 people with her. 3 scientists, 2 engineers, and Dr. Sarah Kim, a xenopsychologist who was there to study the bond between humans and ships. "Are you ready?" Alara asked the Leviathan, putting her hands on the chair's armrests. She felt warmth wash over her. Confirmation. Excitement. Happiness. Let's go then. What happened next was unlike any spaceflight that had ever happened before. The Leviathan didn't speed up. It just chose to be somewhere else, and reality went along with it. 1 second they were close to the moon. Then they were somewhere else. The view screens, though screens was not enough. They were more like windows into whatever the Leviathan wanted to show, showed impossible landscapes. Their first stop was a nebula. The Leviathan had been there 11,000 years ago, when a cloud of gas and dust was forming new stars. But seeing it through the Leviathan's eyes was not the same as seeing it through telescopes. They could feel the process happening. The pressure of gas clouds that are about to break up. The moment nuclear fusion started and a new star burst into flames. The shock waves spread out, pushing more matter together and causing more births in a chain reaction of creation. The astrophysicist on the team, Dr. Marcus Rivera, was openly crying. "I've spent my whole life studying how stars form," he said. "But I never got it. Not this way. It's lovely. Alive." The Leviathan took them deeper into the nebula, to a place where strange chemistry was making the building blocks of life. Amino acids, proteins, and other basic building blocks of life were mixing and combining in clouds that were light years wide. "This is what it loves," Ilara said softly, sensing how the Leviathan felt. "This feeling of seeing something new come to life. Even after 50,000 years, it never gets old." Their second trip took them to a place in space known as the Graveyard of Giants. Their huge, old ships from a dozen long-dead civilizations drifted in silence forever. The Leviathan moved through them like a person going to a funeral, stopping at each abandoned ship. Ilara felt its memories through their connection. It had known some of these ships when they were still in use, shared space lanes with them, and said hello to them in the language of starfarers. Now they were gone, and only the Leviathan was left to remember them. "You're keeping their memory alive," Ilara said, and she felt a sense of understanding. "Remember every ship you see and every civilization you meet. You keep the galaxy's memories. Sadness. Pride. Go. Yes." Dr. Kim was writing down notes quickly, and her hands were shaking. "This is amazing. The psychological profile I'm making. The Leviathan isn't just smart, it's also very emotional, empathetic, and even sentimental. It cares about what it sees." Ilara said, "Of course it cares. Wouldn't you, after watching civilizations rise and fall for 50,000 years? Every trip is special to it. Every find is important." Their third trip was the most amazing one yet. The Leviathan took them to what it called the place between. This was a part of space where the laws of physics didn't work right and dimensions folded into each other like origami. It was impossible, hard to understand, and completely beautiful. There were colors that people couldn't see with their eyes. Shapes moved through angles that shouldn't have been there. Time moved sideways, up, in loops and in spirals. The crew could see probability itself, with the many possible outcomes of events branching and merging like rivers. Engineer Lisa Park asked, "How is this possible?" in a voice that was barely a whisper. "How can we even see this without going crazy?" Ilara said, "The Leviathan is protecting us." She felt the ship's soft presence around her mind like a blanket. It's filtering reality, showing us what we can handle, and turning dimensions we can't understand into forms we can. It's looking out for us. There was a sound of pure wonder and slight hysteria in Dr. Rivera's laugh. "We're seeing things that no one else has ever seen. Places that might not even be real in our universe. And we're safe because an old, intelligent ship that decided to be our friend is taking us on a tour and keeping us safe. This is crazy. This is great." The Leviathan seemed to hum with happiness, which is the same as a smile. The trips kept happening over the next few weeks. They saw a planet where silicon-based life forms sang at frequencies that changed the shape of the land, making mountains and valleys out of pure sound. They went to an old space station that had been empty for 20,000 years. The Leviathan's memories helped them learn about the people who built it, including their art, philosophy, and the choice they made to leave physical existence behind. They found a place where dark matter acted like living things, making intricate patterns and structures that could have been art, language, or something else entirely. They watched a binary star system dance through its gravitational ballet, destroying and creating worlds over and over again. They learned something new on every trip, not just about the universe but also about the Leviathan itself. Ilara learned that the ship was not only old but also smart. Over the years, it had come up with ideas about life, consciousness, and meaning. It thought that the universe was meant to be seen, that observation itself gave reality meaning, and that curiosity might be the most important thing any conscious being could do. "That's why you turned down everyone else," Ilara said in a quiet moment, sitting in her chair while the crew slept. "They wanted to take what you learned and use it to gain power, money, or respect. They didn't get that the point is the journey. The discovery itself is the prize." Affirmation. Comprehension. Finally, someone got it. Ilara went on, "You and I aren't so different. Both of us felt alone for a long time, like no one else saw the world the way we did. We both just wanted someone to share the amazement with." Ilara's heart swelled with warmth, gratitude, and love when she got the response. She had found a friend as well as a ship. A friend. A kindred spirit in the vast emptiness of space. And through her, humanity had gained something priceless. Proof that connection, empathy, and real curiosity could do what power and pride could never do. The news of the Leviathan's trips with Ilara spread like wildfire across the galaxy. People who had tried and failed for thousands of years to get the ship's attention saw humanity's success in different ways, as miraculous, confusing, infuriating, or inspiring. There were a lot of requests, questions, and jealousy going around in diplomatic circles. The Zarthic Collective sent an official message that said, "We who have mastered quantum thought across galaxies could not reach the Leviathan. How did a species that only learned to fly in space 200 years ago succeed where we failed?" The crystalline chorus sang in frequencies of wonder, "Ilara Vance, a human, has done what we thought was impossible. We need to know what this is." Even the ancient Valorians, who didn't often talk about younger species, said, "The humans have shown us a way of doing things we hadn't thought of. There might be wisdom in how simple they are." But not everyone liked the reactions. The Korvax Empire, a militaristic civilization that tried to capture the Leviathan 4,000 years ago, was especially angry. Primitive people stumble into success while more advanced civilizations are kept from it. This goes against the way things are supposed to be. People who can use the ship's power should own it. 2 months into the exploratory mission, Director Chen called Ilara to a meeting right away. The director said, "We've got a problem," and her face was serious on the video screen. "Several alien governments want access to the Leviathan. Some are offering us alliances, technology trades, or anything else we want. Some people are making threats that aren't very clear. The Korvax Empire has moved a battle fleet to the edge of our solar system." Ilara could feel the Leviathan in her mind, watching over her and ready to fight if she needed to. "Be honest with them," Ilara said in a calm voice. "We can't give the Leviathan away. It's not a tool or a resource. It is a living thing that can think for itself. Other civilizations need to know what connection really means if they want to connect with it. Which is that you can't make it happen. You can't get it. You can't force it to do what you want. You need to show real interest, real respect, and real friendship. For 50,000 years, civilizations have tried to use the Leviathan. It doesn't want to be seen as a way to an end anymore." Ambassador Quellen, who had been to these meetings a lot, said, "Engineer Vance is right. I have seen her interact with the Leviathan a lot. Their bond isn't based on business. It is. The word for friendship, in English, is friendship. Maybe that's what we've all been missing." Chin, the director, sighed. "Friendship diplomacy. I never thought this day would come. But you need to be careful, Ilara. There are strong people out there who won't accept that answer. Some people might try to take what they can't get." The Leviathan's mood changed as if in response to that warning. Not fear, it didn't fear anything, it was determined. Keeping safe. If anyone threatened Ilara or the crew, they would find out that ancient didn't mean passive. Ilara said, "We'll be careful. But we're not going to stop exploring. That's not a choice." People on Earth were fascinated by Ilara's story in ways that no one had expected. She didn't want to be famous or get attention, but it found her anyway. Every news show had her face on it, and every headline had her name in it. The engineer who made friends with a spaceship. Bridge to the stars for humanity. The woman who talked to giants. Her philosophy made people think about technology in a new way. Engineers began to speak about their machines with greater respect and empathy. People all over the world agreed with the idea that real connection and understanding could do what force and complexity couldn't. Schools taught kids about the Vance approach, which is about leading with curiosity and empathy instead of power. Environmental groups used it to talk about how people relate to the Earth. Researchers in AI even started to use ideas of respect and partnership in their work. Ilara thought it was all a little too much and more than a little embarrassing. "I just talked to a spaceship," she told Dr. Kim during one of their regular mental health checkups. "I didn't come up with a new way of thinking that would change the world. I just treated the Leviathan the way I would want to be treated, with honesty, respect, and real interest." Dr. Kim smiled. "That's why it worked. You didn't think too much about it. You didn't try to look good or important. You were just real." And it turns out that being real is the rarest thing in the galaxy. At this point, the crew had grown. Scientists from many fields had asked for the Leviathan's amazing discoveries to be shared. The ship, surprisingly, agreed to take on more passengers. Not a lot, but a few at a time so that more people could have the same experience that Ilara did. But they had to know what they were getting into first. You couldn't drive the Leviathan like a taxi or a research ship. It was a partner, and partners had to respect each other. The first new crew member was biologist Dr. Maria Santos. Her first trip took them to a planet where life had evolved in total darkness, creating bioluminescent communication that was so complicated it could be a form of collective consciousness. "This is more than anything we have in our databases," she said, watching the organisms pulse with light in complex patterns. The Leviathan, does it know what they're saying? The answer came through Alara, partly. It is a language that is only 3 million years old. But it talks about beauty, growth, and the happiness of being alive. Life always finds a way to enjoy itself. Dr. Santos cried out of amazement. Every new crew member left changed. They had not only seen amazing scientific events, but they had also felt what it was like to be part of something bigger than themselves. They had connected with an intelligence so old and big that it changed how they thought about consciousness, existence, and meaning. And other civilizations began to understand, but only slowly and with great reluctance. The crystalline chorus sent an official apology. We saw the Leviathan as a puzzle to solve and a mystery to figure out. We didn't think of it as a person we should know. We were wrong. The Zarthic collective said, our pride blinded us. We thought that because we were moving up, the Leviathan would pay attention to us. We now see that worthiness is not measured by technology but by spirit. Some of the more aggressive civilizations even changed their minds. They didn't know how people had gotten so far, but they couldn't deny that they had. And maybe, just maybe, there was something to learn from the way these young, curious people acted with empathy instead of power. The Korvax Empire was still hostile, but they pulled back their fleet. They even knew that pushing the issue would only prove humanity's point. The Leviathan could not and should not be controlled. Alara and the Leviathan made a discovery 6 months into their exploratory mission that would change everything. They had gone to the farthest parts of space that had been explored, to a place that old star charts called the Silence. This was a place where no signals came out, no expeditions came back, and there was nothing but empty space. Are you sure you want to go there? Alara asked the Leviathan. Even you have never been in that area before. The answer was complicated, a mix of curiosity and caution and wonder and respect. But in the end, yes. Wasn't that what it meant to explore? Going into the unknown together? Together, Alara said. Always together. They stepped over the line into the silence. For a while nothing happened. Alara then felt something there. Not angry but so big and different that her mind had a hard time understanding it. The Leviathan could feel it too. Alara felt feelings from the ship that she had never felt before. Awe, respect, and something like recognition through their connection. What is it? She asked in a whisper. The answer came slowly and carefully, as if the Leviathan itself was having trouble finding the right words to describe what it was seeing. Other people. Just like me. A meeting of the old ones. They have been waiting. Waiting for someone to come along and show that being alone isn't the only way to solve a problem. They have been waiting for hope. Alara's breath stopped. Are there more of you? There were always more. But we all traveled alone, thinking we were the last, the only one or too different to be understood. Up until now. Up until you. As shapes started to come out of the dark, the view screens lit up. Ships, if you could call them that, in every shape and size. Some were living, organic ships like the Leviathan. Some were shapes that couldn't exist in real life and hurt to look at. Some appeared to partially inhabit alternate dimensions. Some were made of nothing but light. Some were so strange that Alara's eyes wouldn't focus on them right. But they were all there. All of them are old. All aware. By myself for a long time. And now, because one lonely ship had made friends with one human engineer, they were all coming together. Getting together. For the first time in a long time we are reaching out to each other. Alara felt the Leviathan's emotions wash over her. Happiness, thankfulness, vindication, and hope. It had waited 50,000 years, thinking it might be the last of its kind and the only one who could remember in a universe that didn't care. It wasn't by itself. Alara wasn't either. Alara, the readings we're getting, there are hundreds of them. Dr. Kim's voice came over the comm, shaking with awe and tears. Maybe even thousands. Sentient ships from all over the galaxy, coming together at this point in time. What did you do? Alara smiled even though she was crying. I didn't do anything. I just showed that it's possible to connect. That being alone isn't the only choice. That sometimes all it takes is someone to say, let's go on an adventure together. One by one the old ships started to talk to each other, not with words but with light, feelings, and the language of consciousness itself. They had stories to tell, knowledge that had been passed down through the ages, and amazing things they had seen in the universe's lifetime. And they were finally ready to give them away. Not because they had to. Not because they had to pay anyone back. But they did it because they wanted to. It turned out that connection was what every conscious being wanted, even ancient, powerful beings who had sailed the stars for thousands of years. The Leviathan sent one last message, not just to Alara but to everyone on Earth and all the species that were watching this moment happen. You wanted to know what makes people unique. Why you did well when empires failed. It's not your tech. not your strength, not your knowledge. It's easier and deeper. You know that every mind, no matter how different, old or strange, should be seen, understood, and valued for what it is. You offered friendship without any hidden agenda. You invited exploration just out of curiosity. You didn't see me as a tool, you saw me as a person. That is your gift to the galaxy. The reminder that we can always connect with others if we are open-hearted. Ilara leaned back in her chair and looked at the lights from 1,000 old ships. She felt more at home there than she ever had on Earth. So, she said with a smile, what do we do next? The answer came from the Leviathan and a chorus of other voices, old and wise and full of childlike wonder. Everything. People all over the galaxy called the gathering of old ships in the silence, the convergence. And it changed everything. For the first time in recorded history, the most powerful and mysterious beings in the known universe were talking to each other and to younger civilizations. All because one person had shown that it was possible to connect. But the first problem was practical. How do you help beings that see the world in very different ways talk to each other? The Leviathan turned into the bridge. The Leviathan could turn the thoughts, feelings, and knowledge of the other ancient ships into forms that younger civilizations could understand because it was connected to Ilara, who was connected to the rest of humanity and allied species. It was hard work. The Leviathan had to act like a universal translator, taking in millions of years of knowledge, emotional context that crossed dimensions, and ideas that didn't have equivalents in modern languages. But it did so happily and willingly. This is what it had always wanted, to share, connect, and be a part of something bigger than itself. Ilara could tell that her partner was under a lot of stress. During a quiet moment she said softly, "You're pushing too hard. You don't have to translate everything all at once. We have time. But there's a lot to talk about. There is a lot they need to learn. So much that has been kept inside lonely minds for so long, waiting for someone to hear it." Ilara said, "I hear you," and put her hand on the armrest of the chair. "And I'm not going anywhere. We'll do this together at a speed that works for you. 50,000 years is a long time for the universe to wait. It can wait a little longer." She felt a wave of love and thanks wash over her, so strong that it hurt her chest. The information that came from the convergence was mind-blowing. One ancient ship, which called itself the Witness, was a huge, crystalline structure that existed in 17 dimensions at the same time. It shared its observations of how the universe has changed over the past 12 billion years. It had seen galaxies crash into each other, black holes merge, and the basic forces of reality change over billions of years. People learned that the universe was much older and stranger than they had thought from what it knew. That there had been many epochs of reality, each with its own set of physical laws. That consciousness might be a basic part of the universe that shows up when things get complicated enough. Another ship, the Gardener, was an organic ship covered in 1,000,000 dead worlds worth of plant life. It had kept the genetic codes of species that had died out on thousands of planets. It promised to share those codes for free so that life that had been lost could be remembered, studied, and maybe even brought back to life. When Dr. Santos looked at the Gardener's archives, she almost passed out. This is the genetic history of the galaxy. Species that lived and died before Earth was even a thing. The evolutionary paths, the new biochemical discoveries, and the incredible variety. There's so much to learn that we could spend 10,000 years studying it and still not get to the bottom of it. A being called the Poet spoke only in metaphors and emotional resonances that didn't use language at all. Its body looked like compressed starlight. It had seen the beauty of the universe for millions of years. Supernovas, nebulas, the dance of binary stars, and the fractal patterns of quantum foam. Its gifts to people were experiences, pure, distilled moments of beauty that could be shared directly from one mind to another. A sunset on a world that was no longer there. The sound of rain falling on a desert made of silicon. The sensation of being in a cloud of living light. The view from inside an accretion disk as matter spiraled into a black hole. People who got the Poet's gifts were changed by them. Artists made things that had never been seen before. Musicians wrote songs that sounded like they were from the spheres themselves. Even the most hardened skeptics cried when they saw beauty that was beyond what evolution had prepared human minds to understand. But the most meaningful gift may have come from a ship called the Librarian. The Librarian, on the other hand, didn't give scientific data or aesthetic experiences. It gave context instead. The past. The tales of civilizations that are no longer around. Every culture that has ever reached the stars, the Librarian said through the Leviathan's translation, faces the same questions. Why are we here? What is the point of our lives? What is the best way to live? I have seen thousands of civilizations try to figure these things out. I have seen how they answered, failed, and succeeded. And I have learned that the questions are the same for all species, but the answers are always different for each one. The librarian opened its archives to all people and the other young civilizations that were there. These archives held a complete history of galactic civilization that went back tens of thousands of years. Historians cried. Philosophers argued for days on end without getting any sleep. Religious leaders had a hard time dealing with the fact that they could see how thousands of other species had thought about the divine, the important, and the holy. Dr. Kim, the xenopsychologist, spent a week reading the librarian's files non-stop. When he finally came out, his eyes were red from crying and not sleeping. She told Alara, "Do you know what I've learned? All civilizations that survived, thrived, and didn't destroy themselves had one thing in common. Not tech. Not military power. Not even smartness. They cared about other people. They learned how to really see other people as just as valid, important, and deserving of life as they are. The ones who didn't learn that? They're all gone now. Either their own hatred killed them or they killed themselves by being alone and not being able to connect with anyone." Alara thought about that and how the Leviathan had been alone for 50,000 years. She said to her friend, "That's what you were testing for, right? All those thousands of years, turning down one civilization after another. You weren't being picky or rude. You were waiting for someone who had learned that lesson. Someone who knew that connection is more important than winning. Yes. And now that you know, others can learn too. People can share what they know. Maybe fewer civilizations will want to be alone. Maybe fewer people will spend thousands of years alone." Alara realized that this was what it had all been about. Not just looking around. Teaching. Showing the galaxy that there is another way. That's right. You, Alara Vance, are the teacher. The case in point. The proof that it works. 6 months into the convergence, something strange happened. A group from the Korvax Empire, a militaristic civilization that had threatened Earth, asked to meet with Alara and the Leviathan. The request didn't come through official channels. It came privately. In a humble way. Almost embarrassed. Director Chen was suspicious right away. It might be a trap. A way to get close to you and the Leviathan. But Alara could tell that the Leviathan was curious, not scared. A desire to listen to what they had to say. Alara said, "We'll go to the meeting." There were 3 people in the Korvax delegation. They looked like warriors but they weren't carrying any weapons. Their leader, a tall figure with an armored exoskeleton covered in military decorations, came up with an air of nervousness. The warrior said, "Engineer Vance," and their voice came through a normal comm device. "I am Commander Jincourt. I was in charge of the fleet that threatened your world." "I remember," Alara said in a calm voice. "I came to say I'm sorry." The warrior took off their helmet, and their face was humanoid but clearly alien. They had crystalline eyes, scaled skin, and features that had evolved on a world with a lot of gravity. "My empire has been keeping an eye on the convergence, seeing what you've done. And we have had to face hard truths about ourselves." "What are they?" "We've been chasing power, conquest, and dominance for 10,000 years, and it's left us empty. Our empire is huge, our army is the best in the world, and our technology is cutting edge. But we don't have any friends. Not a single friend. There is no one who cries when our soldiers die or cheers when we do something great. We are alone and we didn't know how much that hurt until we saw what you have built here." The Leviathan's bioluminescent patterns shone in Commander Jincourt's crystalline eyes. They went on, "We tried to catch that ship 4,000 years ago. We thought of it as a weapon, a tool, something that would make us stronger. We failed and we've been angry about it ever since. But now I get it, we failed because we were asking the wrong questions. We wanted to be in charge. But what we really needed was to connect." Alara could feel the Leviathan's emotional response. Understanding, sympathy, and recognition of what it was like to be stuck in patterns that weren't helping her anymore. "What do you want?" Alara said softly. "Help," Jincourt said in a simple way. "Not technology. Not getting to the old ships. Just, help me figure out how to be different. How to make friends instead of armies. How to make friends instead of enemies. Engineer Vance, our civilization is dying. Not from a threat from the outside but from a lack of purpose on the inside. We don't know how to be anything but warriors anymore." Alara stared at the commander for a long time, then at the other 2 Korvax who had come with them. They both looked just as weak and hopeless. She said, "I can't teach you how to change your whole civilization. But I can tell you what I've learned. What I learned from the Leviathan. Would you like to get on board? To feel what exploration is like when it's not about winning?" The 3 Korvax were surprised to see each other. "You would let us on board the Leviathan? After we threatened your world?" Ilara said, everyone should have a chance to learn. Everyone should have a chance to connect. That's what all of this has been about. She felt the Leviathan's approval, which was warm and bright. Commander Gincourt and their two friends joined the crew for the next trip. They were going to a part of space where ancient artists used gravity to shape asteroids into patterns that were impossible to make even millions of years later. When the Korvax saw those sculptures, huge rocks twisted into knots and spirals that should have been impossible to make, arranged in ways that made optical illusions visible from light years away, something broke inside them. Commander Gincourt cried openly, and their tears, which were like crystals, glowed as they fell. We have conquered worlds, they said, their voices breaking. We have built statues of our generals and monuments to our victories. But we've never made anything like this before. Nothing is beautiful just because it is. Nothing that honors life instead of power. We have been so empty. Dr. Kim, who was watching from a distance, whispered to Ilara, "You're not just connecting cultures. You're making them better." "Not me," Ilara said. "The Leviathan. These old ships. They are reminding everyone of what is important. I'm just the one who was ready to listen first." People quickly learned about the Korvax's change. Other militaristic civilizations and empires that were focused on conquest started to doubt their own paths. Delegations came from all over the galaxy, not demanding access or threatening war but asking, sometimes begging, for help. What do we need to do to change? How do we get in touch? How do we fill the void? With the help of the Leviathan, Ilara tried to explain, it's not a formula. You can't download it or learn how to use it. You can choose. Every day you choose to see other people as people instead of problems. You choose to be curious instead of scared. You choose to say, what can we learn together? Instead of, what can I get from you? Some civilizations got it right away. Some people had a hard time because their cultural patterns were too deeply ingrained to change quickly. But they all gave it their best shot, and that mattered. The Leviathan had been trying to teach the galaxy this lesson for 50,000 years. Being connected is not a sign of weakness. Being empathetic doesn't mean being naive. Curiosity is not a waste of time. They are the building blocks of everything good. And a quiet human engineer who had just offered friendship to a lonely ship had made the galaxy remember that truth. A year after the convergence started, the ancient ships officially invited people from younger civilizations to what they called the Council of the Ancient. This was a gathering that had never happened before in history. The meeting would take place in a neutral zone, a part of space where the Leviathan and other ancient ships could live comfortably with smaller ships from many different civilizations. Ilara was chosen to be the main representative of humanity, but this time she wouldn't be by herself. Director Chin, Ambassador Quellen, Commander Gincourt, who is now acting as a bridge between the reformed Korvax and the galactic community, and representatives from 20 other species would be with her. "This has never happened before," Director Chin said as their small ship got closer to the meeting point. "We're about to join a council with beings that have seen stars being born and dying. What could they possibly want from us?" Ilara could feel the answer through her permanent neural link with the Leviathan. This bond had grown stronger over the past year. "They want a point of view," she said. "Because they've lived so long, they sometimes forget what it's like to be young, to not know what to do and to learn. They need to be reminded that change is real, that growth is possible, and that the future isn't just a repeat of the past." The place where the meeting was held was beautiful. The old ships had formed a huge circle, with each one facing the others so that everyone could see them. Smaller ships from younger civilizations gathered around them like kids around their parents. In the middle of the circle was what could only be called a stage, a platform of pure energy where representatives could appear as holographic projections. This made it possible for beings of all sizes, atmospheres, and dimensions to talk to each other directly. The Leviathan spoke first, and even though there was no sound in space, everyone could hear it. "We gather for the first time in 50,000 years. Not alone. Not in a race. But in the council. In the community. We have a lot to teach and learn from the younger species. You have something we sometimes forget. Hope for the future, faith in change, and the bravery to try new things. We will look at not only the physical universe but also the potential of consciousness itself." The old ships introduced themselves and gave their gifts one by one. The witness offered to show how the universe has changed over time, giving younger civilizations access to billions of years of astronomical data. The gardener suggested making a galactic network of genetic libraries so that no species would ever really be lost, even if their home worlds were destroyed. The poet suggested creating beauty zones, which are areas of space set aside for enjoying beauty instead of getting resources. In these zones, civilizations could make art on a cosmic scale. But the most controversial idea was the librarians. The librarian said, "I suggest we set up the Archive of Civilizations. A complete collection of the history, philosophy, art, and knowledge of every species. Not just a place to store data, but a living history that everyone can see, add to, and keep for all future civilizations." A representative from the Uniri combine, an insectoid species known for keeping to themselves, quickly objected, "You want us to tell you everything about our past? Our successes and failures as well as our weaknesses? That is cultural weakness." The librarian said, "It is cultural honesty. For 50,000 years I've seen civilizations hide their mistakes, act like they're perfect, and make the same mistakes over and over again because they wouldn't learn from others. The archive would be a gift to the future, a way for new civilizations to learn from the mistakes of those who came before them so they don't have to make the same ones again." Commander Gincourt stood there, their crystal-clear eyes reflecting the light from a dozen old ships. They said, "The Korvax Empire will give us all of our history. With our mistakes. Including the emptiness that came with our 10,000 years of conquest. It's worth being vulnerable if it means that one civilization can avoid our mistakes." The gesture was amazing. The Korvax, who had just been proud and aggressive, now showed humility and openness. Other kinds of animals started to follow. The Zarthic collective agreed. After that, the Crystalline Chorus. After that, the Valorians. Dozens of civilizations agreed to share their histories, flaws and all, one by one. Ilara's face was wet with tears. This was how change looked. Not perfect, not right away, but real. Civilizations that had spent thousands of years protecting their images were choosing to be vulnerable because they had learned that connection was more important than pride. The second part of the council talked about a more controversial topic: what the ancient ships did in the galaxy. A bureaucratic species called the Talvex Federation asked the question that everyone had been thinking. "With all respect to the ancient ones, your power is unimaginable. You could change the shape of star systems, affect the development of civilizations, keep the peace, or start wars on a scale we can't even imagine. What part will you play in running the galaxy? Will you be in charge? Help? Stay neutral observers?" The old ships talked to each other in a way that looked like complicated patterns of light and energy moving between them. After that, the Leviathan spoke for all of them. "We will not rule. We don't want to be in charge or control. But we won't just sit back and watch either. We suggest a new kind of relationship, mentorship. We will freely share what we know with any civilization that comes to us with real interest and respect. If you ask, we will help you. We will only step in to stop disasters that threaten our very existence, like the extinction of whole species, the collapse of important ecosystems, or damage to reality itself that can't be fixed. Beyond that, younger civilizations need to make their own way." "And what," asked the Talvex representative, "stops you from making existential catastrophe so broad that you can control everything?" "Her," the librarian said simply, and Ilara somehow knew it was about her. "Ilara Vance and people like her. You will be our moral compass and the link between us and the views of younger civilizations. If we go too far and become the controlling forces we used to hate in others, you will let us know. We will listen to." Ilara felt the weight of that duty like a physical force. They were asking her, and all of humanity, to be a check on power that could change reality itself. "That's," she said, then stopped. "That's scary." "Yes," said the Leviathan. "But it is also important. Even when used with good intentions, power without accountability turns into tyranny. We need you to remind us of our limits, call us out when we're wrong, and speak up for those who can't speak for themselves. Can we do this?" Director Chin whispered to Ilara. "Is that something that people can handle?" Ilara thought about her trip. About a ship that had been alone for 50,000 years and was waiting for someone to connect with it. About Commander Gincourt and the Korvax deciding to change instead of conquer. About the hundreds of civilizations that learned to put empathy ahead of power. She said, "I don't know if we can. But I know we have to give it a shot. Who else will if we don't? The old ones are giving us their trust. We owe it to them and to every future civilization to be worthy of that trust." She stood up, and her holographic image got bigger so that everyone could see her clearly. She said, "This is a duty that humanity accepts. Not because we think we're better or perfect, but because we know what it's like to be small, weak, and hopeful. We'll talk for those who can't talk for themselves. When power needs to be questioned, we will do so. We'll remind the old ones and ourselves that being wise doesn't mean knowing everything. It's about being willing to listen to the answers and asking the right questions." The Leviathan's emotional response flowed through their connection. Pride, love, and complete trust in her. Other civilizations started to talk around the circle. The crystalline chorus said they would help people with this job. After that, the Unari combine. Then 12 more people agreed to be voices of accountability and bridges between the old and the young. The Council of the Ancient didn't set up a hierarchy, they set up a network. Not rulers and subjects, but mentors and students who could push each other, teach each other, and grow together. The poet, a being of compressed starlight who spoke through art, suggested the last thing on the Council's agenda. The poet said, "There is one part of space we have never been to." The message came through as a mix of deep mystery and fear. A place that even we old people are afraid to go. The deep is a hole in reality where the basic laws of physics don't work at all. We don't know what is there. We don't know if anything can live there. But maybe, just maybe, it's time for us to stop being scared of the unknown. A wave of doubt went through the old ships. Ilara could sense the Leviathan's own fear. For the first time since she'd known it, her friend was really scared. "Why hasn't anyone ever gone to the deep before?" she asked. "Because those who enter do not return," the witness said, its 17-dimensional existence somehow conveying deep sadness. 12 ships have tried to explore the deep over the years. None of them have come back. We don't know if they were killed, changed, or just found something so interesting that they decided to stay. It is the most dangerous thing in the universe and the most mysterious thing. "Then why leave now?" asked Ambassador Quellen. The Leviathan said, "Because we are no longer alone. Because we've learned that being alone isn't safe and that some mysteries need to be explored even if they are dangerous. Because we have something to come back for." Ilara's breath caught because of the emotional weight behind those words. The Leviathan had been floating around for 50,000 years with nothing to keep it in touch with reality, no reason to avoid risks, and no one who would miss it if it never came back. Now it had friends, companions, and a reason to be more than just a wanderer. Ilara said softly, "You're afraid," speaking directly to her friend through their private connection. "Not of the deep, but of losing what we've built." "Yes. For the first time in thousands of years, I have something to lose. And it scares me." "Then we'll face it together," Ilara said. "We'll explore the deep not as individuals but as a group. And no matter what we find there, we'll be ready for it because we have each other's backs. That's what it means to connect." The council voted. Everyone agreed. The trip to the deep would be the first big project that the ancient ships and younger civilizations worked on together. They would go together with the help of the ancients' power and the new ideas and ways of thinking of the younger species. As partners, friends, and equals, they would face the biggest mystery in the universe. Ilara stood at the viewport of her ship as the council adjourned. She watched as the old ships began to break up, their bioluminescent patterns glowing with what looked like hope and determination. Next to her, Dr. Kim appeared. "Do you know what you've done? You have changed the course of galactic civilization in a big way. A year ago, these ancient beings were alone, young civilizations were fighting with each other, and the idea of working together across such huge gaps in age and power seemed impossible. As a united community, we're now planning the most ambitious exploration mission in history." Ilara smiled. "I didn't do anything. I just offered to be friends with a lonely ship." Dr. Kim corrected, "You did everything. You showed that even the most advanced technology in the universe is not as strong as a truly open heart. You showed everyone, young and old, that we can always connect if we are honest and respectful. That's a big deal." Ilara's mind was wrapped in the Leviathan's presence like a warm hug. "Thanks for coming to see me, for getting me, for reminding me that there are still amazing things to find, even after 50,000 years. The most amazing thing of all is connection itself. Thank you for waiting for someone who could see you for who you really are," Ilara said. "For being patient for thousands of years until the right person came along. For showing me that the universe is big, strange, and beautiful, and that the best things aren't things, they're relationships." They stood together, a person and an old ship, looking at the stars and getting ready for the biggest adventure of their lives. The deep waited, and they would deal with it together. 3 months of planning went into the trip to the deep. This is a very short amount of time for something so big, but it was necessary to move quickly. The council had agreed that momentum was important. If they hesitated, they might become afraid, which could destroy the fragile unity they had built. The expedition force was unlike anything that had ever happened in the galaxy. The core was made up of 20 old ships such as the Leviathan, the Witness, the Librarian, and the Poet. 50 ships from younger civilizations surrounded them, each with its own set of skills and points of view. 3 ships were sent by humanity. The main ship had Ilara and 30 experts on board. The other people had scientific tools, emergency supplies, and communication arrays that were meant to keep them in touch with the rest of the galaxy for as long as possible. Commander Gincourt and a reformed Korvax fleet protected the military. They didn't expect to fight, but they were ready for anything. Gincourt told Alara, "We have spent 10,000 years getting better at war. Maybe we can use those skills for something better, keeping explorers safe instead of taking over worlds." The crystalline chorus added their ability to make quantum-entangled communication links that could, in theory, work even if normal spacetime broke down. The Zarthik sent telepaths who could keep in touch with each other mentally even when they couldn't talk to each other in person. The Ynairi gave us advanced autonomous drones that can go into places that are too dangerous for people to live in. It was the biggest and most cooperative project in the history of the galaxy. And they were going to point it at something that had already killed everyone who had tried. Alara couldn't sleep the night before she left. She floated in her room without any gravity, looking out the window at Earth, a blue marble that had once been her whole world. "Are you having second thoughts?" The voice of Dr. Kim came from the door. Alara said, "Not exactly second thoughts. More like, knowing what we're putting at risk. We might not come back if something goes wrong or if the deep is as dangerous as everyone thinks it is. And the Leviathan and all the other old ships are priceless. Not able to be replaced. They know a lot. If we lose them, then we lose them exploring, which is what they were made for," Dr. Kim said softly as he floated over to join her. "Alara, these old beings have been safe and alone for thousands of years, keeping themselves alive but not really living. You gave them a reason to take chances. That's a present. Or I've talked them into killing themselves. You've made them brave." Dr. Kim put a hand on Alara's shoulder. "There's a difference." Alara's mind was awake, alert, and aware of the Leviathan's presence. "Don't worry about me. I gave up fear a long time ago. Whatever is waiting for me in the deep, I am happy to face it because I have a reason to. With friends. My exploration has meaning beyond just looking at things for the first time in 50,000 years. That is worth the risk." Alara felt tears welling up in the zero gravity, and little balls of salt water floated away from her eyes. "I don't want to lose you," she said softly. "And I don't want to lose this bond, this friendship, this amazing feeling of being understood. But my friend, the fear of losing something shows that we have gained something valuable. Would you give up what we've found to avoid the chance of losing it?" "No," Alara said. "Never." "Then we move on. All together. Like we always do." The expedition left at dawn, which was a random time in space but felt right in a symbolic way. Billions of people across the galaxy watched live feeds as the Leviathan and the fleet set out on their journey to the deep. Even at the faster-than-light speeds that the old ships could reach, it would take 2 weeks to get to the edge of the deep. The trip itself brought the members of the expedition closer together. Crew members from different species shared food, stories, and knowledge. Engineers from Earth and Korvax warriors shared ideas. Members of the crystalline chorus taught younger species how to meditate in harmony. The Zarthik telepaths taught people how to talk to each other. And the old ships, which were no longer alone, enjoyed the experience of traveling together as a fleet, as a community. The poet talked about beautiful things it had seen over the years, like sunsets on dead worlds, the death song of stars that were falling apart, and the geometric beauty of fractal galaxies. The witness gave us a look at the history of the universe, showing us how the first galaxies formed, how heavy elements were born in stellar forges, and how life moved from one star system to another. The librarian held story hours every day where it told stories from civilizations that are no longer around, including their victories and defeats, their loves and fights, and their final fates. These stories became lessons, ways for younger civilizations to learn without having to make the same mistakes over and over again. Professor Martinez, one of the historians of humanity, said, "This is what education should be. Not dry facts but real-life experiences." Setting. Knowing that all civilizations deal with the same basic problems, even if they come up with different solutions. They started to see changes on the 10th day. The space looked off. Stars were in places that didn't make sense. Light bent in ways that broke all the rules of physics. Time seemed to skip and stutter. Crew members would finish a conversation and then have it again without remembering the first time. "We're getting close to the edge," the witness said. "Where reality starts to fall apart. Everyone should protect themselves. What happens next will be disorienting." That was an understatement. Going into the deep was like falling through the surface of reality. They were in normal space for a while. Then all of a sudden they were in a different place. If somewhere and else even meant anything anymore. There was chaos on the view screens. Not an empty void or space full of stars, but fractal shapes that hurt to see. Colors that shouldn't be there. Shapes that had too many or too few dimensions. Time moved in more than one direction at the same time. Instead of laws, cause and effect became suggestions. A few of the crew members threw up. Some people yelled. Some of them just shut down because they couldn't understand what they were seeing. But the old ships held their ground, making bubbles of normal space-time around the smaller ships that kept them safe. The Leviathan wrapped Alara in a protective cocoon, making reality easier for her human brain to handle. This is worse than I thought it would be. The deep has become less stable since the last time I got close to its edges. Alara said, something's not right here, even though she was still confused. This isn't normal. This isn't just a place where physics doesn't work. It's like someone broke physics on purpose. The librarian's answer came through, and even in the translation, it was clear that they were under a lot of stress. You are right. The deep is a cut. A terrible thing happened here a long time ago before any of us were born. The world was broken and it never got better. Can wounds heal? Commander Gincourt asked, their voice tight with barely controlled fear. Is it possible for reality to fix itself? The witness said, we don't know. That's part of the reason we're here. To get it? To find out if anything can be done. They pushed deeper into the deep, where the old ships worked together to keep normal space-time corridors stable for the fleet. It was hard work, like swimming against a riptide that wanted to tear apart the very fabric of existence. And then they discovered something. There was a structure in the middle of the deep which was impossible. Not something that happened naturally, but something that was made. It was a huge building that existed in many dimensions at once. Its design was so strange that even the ancient ships had trouble understanding it. What's that? Alara took a breath. The poet replied, and the message came through as pure awe mixed with fear. A monument. Or a warning. Or maybe both. It came before us. Came before everything we know. This was made by beings so advanced and different from us that we can't even begin to understand their purpose. Patterns began to become clear as they got closer. There were symbols, equations, what looked like writing or art, or even mathematical proofs about the nature of reality itself all over the structure. And in the middle, a message. Not in any language, but in the pure meaning that anyone who saw it could understand right away. We tried to go beyond. We didn't succeed. The world fell apart. This is our warning. Don't go beyond certain limits. Some questions should not be answered. We became too much, and in becoming too much, we became nothing. Don't forget us. Learn from us. Do not follow us. The weight of that message, the tragedy, the regret, and the desperate hope that their failure might teach others, made the whole expedition stop talking. The librarian slowly read, they tried to go beyond physical existence. To become pure thought and consciousness, free from matter and energy. And the process broke reality itself. They ripped a hole in the universe and fell through it. The 12 ships that went into the deep and never came back, the witness said in a low voice. They didn't die. They got this message. And they had to pick one. What option? Alara wanted to know. Should I stay and try to heal the wound? To protect the deep from people making the same mistake as the beings who made it? The 12 decided to stay. They became the guardians of a tragedy and the keepers of a warning. New people showed up as if in response to those words. Ships, if they could still be called ships, came out of the impossible shapes that were all around them. The 12 ships that went into the deep and never came back. But they had changed. After living in broken spacetime for millions of years, they changed and adapted to the chaos, and they were no longer completely real like everything else. But they were aware. And they knew who the new people were. You came. The message came not as words but as a clear idea. We have been alone for so long watching over this tragedy. We couldn't leave or come back because someone had to stay. Someone had to keep an eye on things, warn others, and make sure this wound didn't get worse. Then you aren't lost, the Leviathan said. You are heroes. Choosing to be alone to keep others safe. We made our decision. But now you are here. And maybe you can finish what we started. Are you done? Alara wanted to know. The cut can heal. Not erased, that can't happen. But they got better. Settled down. Made safe. It needs power we don't have, knowledge we've spent a long time gathering, and most importantly, connection. Togetherness. Everyone who is aware must choose to act in perfect harmony, give up their own will for the sake of the group, and trust completely. Alara got it right away. That's why it wasn't possible before. Before the convergence, before the old ships learned to connect, and before the younger civilizations learned to work together, it would have been impossible. But now maybe. If you want to try. The choice was clear but scary. They could try to heal the deep, to stabilize the wound in real life, and to make sure that no one else would be hurt by this tragedy. But for the mission to work, Everyone on every ship, every crew member and every conscious being would have to link their minds, act as one, and completely trust that they were connected. If it failed, they could all be lost, changed like the 12 Guardians and stuck in broken spacetime forever. If it worked, they would heal a wound that had been there for billions of years, show that working together could do what being alone could never do, and show that connection was the strongest force in the universe. Elara looked around at her crew, at the faces of people from a dozen different species, and at the old ships that had put everything on the line for hope. She said, "We didn't get this far to go back now. Say if you want to try, everyone. If you decide to back out, that's fine. This is a risk that goes beyond what we agreed to." There was a long pause. Then Commander Gincourt said, "The Korvax are with you." "The Crystalline Chorus joins this effort," said Ambassador Quellen. "One by one, every type, every crew and every voice, yes. And the 20 ancient ships, all of them, their emotional resonance a chorus of determination, hope and complete faith in this fragile, precious connection they had finally found. Yes." Elara took a deep breath, touched the armrest of her chair, and felt the Leviathan's mind wrap around hers. "Then let's fix a wound in reality itself." And they started as one mind across thousands of individual minds. The first step in healing the deep was not to use force, but to understand. The 12 Guardian ships shared everything they had learned over the years they had been watching over the wound. They talked about the wound's structure, the patterns of broken spacetime, and the equations that showed how reality had broken. It was knowledge that came at a high cost and took a long time to get. The librarian said, "The wound is like a tear in fabric," and they were able to understand the information at lightning speed. But reality isn't fabric, it's more like a living system. This injury never healed because it didn't have what living systems need to heal: connection, flow of energy, purpose. Then we don't make it close, Elara thought. We give it what it needs to get better. That's right. The plan became clear. Every ship in the fleet would have to carefully place themselves around the deep's wound to make a network of consciousness. A web of connection that could send energy, purpose, and intention into the injury. The old ships would provide the raw power by tapping into energy reserves that have built up over thousands of years. The younger species would give them the vision, the faith that healing was possible, and the hope that had kept them going even when it was dangerous. Elara would be the center of attention because of her connection to the Leviathan. She would be the thread that connected everyone, with human empathy bridging the gaps between alien minds. "Are you ready for this?" As Elara sat down in her chair one last time, Dr. Kim asked. Elara said honestly, "No. I'm not ready. No one could be ready for something like this. But I'm ready. That has to be enough." She shut her eyes and opened her mind. The connection grew stronger, like a flower made of starlight. First came the Leviathan, who she knew and loved. Its mind wrapped around hers like a hug. Then the other old ships, whose minds were strange and vast but no longer strange, became family in ways that went beyond species or physical form. Next came the younger civilizations. The scientific curiosity and artistic passion of people. The Korvax's hard-won knowledge and need for forgiveness. The Crystalline Chorus's harmony. The Zarthic's ability to read minds and feel what others are feeling. The Yaniri's careful accuracy. Dozens of species and thousands of individuals all opening their minds to each other, trusting each other completely and connecting with each other fully. Elara felt like she was becoming part of something bigger. Not losing who she is, but growing who she is. She was both herself and everyone else. At the same time, both individual and group. One voice in a chorus that reached across the galaxy. They both reached for the deep. The wound was screaming in real life. A silent, horrible scream that went beyond sound and perception. A deep wrongness that made all of existence cry out in pain. But now, for the first time since it was made, the wound had company. It was touched by consciousness. Not trying to close it up or erase the damage, just being there. Recognizing the pain. Giving understanding. You're in pain. We can see you. We get it. You don't have to be alone in your pain anymore. The network started to send energy. Not hostile or intrusive, healing. Like blood flowing to a wound, bringing oxygen and nutrients and letting natural processes do their thing. The wound reacted. Slowly and carefully, like an animal that is scared and learning to trust. The strange shapes started to settle down. The impossible colors turned into something more like normal space. Time stopped skipping and stuttering. It was working. But it cost a lot. Elara could feel the stress on everyone in the network. The old ships were using up energy reserves that had built up over millions of years. The crew members of the younger species were getting nosebleeds, migraines, and other signs that their minds were stretched too far. "We can't keep this up much longer," Commander Gincourt's voice came through the connection, tight with pain. We don't have to keep going forever, Elara said, her own mind burning with effort. Just long enough for the healing to start working. Just long enough for reality to remember how to be whole. The poet added its voice, which was somehow beautiful even in the worst of times. Pain is temporary. Beauty lasts forever. What we make here will last until the stars die. They pushed harder. The whole fleet, the whole network, and every living thing giving everything they had. And the deep was different. The wound didn't go away, that was never possible. But it got better. Yes, it was scarred. Yes, it was different than it had been before. But steady. Not dangerous. Not spreading anymore and not threatening to eat everything around it. Reality came back together and the screaming finally stopped. Elara was on the floor of the bridge when she opened her eyes. Dr. Kim was leaning over her with a medical scanner in his hand. He looked both relieved and scared. The doctor said, "You've been out for 6 hours. Half of the fleet is in the same condition. But Elara, we did it. The readings we're getting from the deep are steady. Stable, in fact. The cut is getting better." Elara tried to sit up but she couldn't. Then she tried again with Dr. Kim's help. She could feel her friend's tiredness and pride through her connection with the Leviathan. "We did it. We did what we couldn't do alone. The 12 Guardians are no longer in jail. After being alone for a long time, they can come back and rejoin the galaxy. And the deep will be proof." "Proof of what?" Elara asked in a weak voice. "That link is the strongest thing in the world. More powerful than technology, more powerful than the strength of ancient ships, and more powerful than the goals of empires. When people choose to really connect, trust, and act as one, reality itself has to change to make room for that unity." There were a lot of messages coming in from all over the fleet. Every ship that reported in had its crew counted. Tired, hurt, and some with injuries that would take time to heal, but alive. All of them are still alive. The 12 Guardians who had been on watch were crying with joy that was clear even in their changed state. Elara told the Leviathan to take us home. Bring everyone home. The trip back took 3 weeks, which was a lot longer than the trip there because everyone needed time to heal. But those weeks turned into a party. The deep, which used to stand for fear and tragedy, had changed into something else. Yes, a memorial to the beings who killed themselves in their quest for transcendence. But it's also a monument to the power of connection, healing, and working together. The news spread across the galaxy faster than the expedition could get there. When they got to the outer territories, fleets from dozens of civilizations were waiting for them to celebrate what they had done. The response from people was huge. Earth had a parade that went around the world. Elara's face was on every screen, and her story was told and retold until she begged for privacy. She kept saying in every interview, "I didn't do this alone. I didn't even do most of it. Everyone on that trip put their lives on the line. The old ships gave the power. The younger species gave us hope. I was just the person who happened to link them." But the Leviathan knew better. It told her the truth in their private messages. You weren't just the link. You were the spark. The proof of concept. The proof that empathy could close any gap, curiosity could conquer any fear, and connection could reach any goal. Everyone else did what you did. You taught us how. 6 months after the trip to the deep, Elara stood in front of the Galactic Council, which had been set up after the convergence. More than 200 civilizations were represented, with ancient ships acting as advisors and mentors and younger species taking on leadership roles. She had been asked to talk about what would happen to galactic civilization in the future. About what happened next. "I'm not a politician," she said, feeling uncomfortable in front of so many people. "I'm not a philosopher or a diplomat. I'm just an engineer who talks to computers. So, a year and a half ago I told a lonely spaceship, let's explore. Not for power. Not for money. Not to beat or rule over others or show that we're better than them. But the universe is big, strange, and beautiful, and it should be seen. Because there are amazing things out there that no one has seen yet. Exploration isn't about what we take, it's about what we find both out there and inside of us. We've shown that it's possible to connect across any gap. That old ships and new species can work together. That enemies can become friends. That wounds can heal if we give them what they need. So I say we keep looking. Together. Not as a single species like humanity, Korvax, or Crystalline Chorus, but as a group. As friends who want to know what's out there beyond the next star." She stopped for a moment, feeling the Leviathan's presence in her mind, warm and proud. "A year and a half ago, I whispered to a spaceship that had turned down everyone for 50,000 years. I said, let's explore, and somehow miraculously that was enough. That simple invitation opened a door that had been shut for thousands of years. So I'm saying it again to all of you. To every civilization, species, and person who can hear this message, let's go on an adventure. All together. And let's see what amazing things we can find. Not just humans but dozens of other species also applauded in their own way in the council chamber. Chimes made of crystals, harmonies that could be heard through telepathy, and voices that ranged from roars to whispers. And all of the old ships were glowing with bioluminescent patterns that spelled out the same thing in 1,000 different languages. Yes. Together. Always with each other. Ilara Vance stood on the bridge of the Leviathan 10 years later and looked out at a view that still took her breath away. They were in a part of space that had never been explored before. A nebula where quantum fluctuations made temporary pockets of different physical laws. Time went backwards in one place. In another, gravity pushed things away instead of pulling them in. In the third, light acted like a solid object. 50 ships from the Galactic Exploration Initiative, which had grown out of the convergence, were with them. Scientists, artists, philosophers, and engineers all working together to chart the unknown. Dr. Kim, who is now the head of the initiative, floated over to her. The information we're gathering here will keep researchers busy for decades. It's revolutionary to have chemical reactions that go backward in time, ecology that doesn't use gravity, and life forms that use light. And beautiful, Ilara said as she watched the light beings dance through the empty space. Always beautiful, Dr. Kim said. She looked at Ilara with interest. Do you ever wish you hadn't done it? Giving up a normal life? You could have stayed on Earth, made a home, and lived a quiet life. Instead, you've been in space for 10 years, linked to an old ship, and in charge of connecting an entire galaxy. Ilara smiled and touched the armrest of her chair. She could feel the Leviathan's presence wrap around her mind like a warm, old blanket. Regret? She asked. How could I be sorry I found my best friend? How could I regret being a part of something that brought people and civilizations together, healed wounds, and showed that connection is more important than power? How could I regret spending every day with people and beings I love exploring the most beautiful, strange, and wonderful universe? The Leviathan answered with pure warmth, love, and thanks because of their bond. My buddy. My friend. My teacher. You gave me purpose, hope, and joy which I thought I had lost forever. For 50,000 years I have been looking for things, but I have really lived for only 10 years, the 10 years I have spent with you. Ilara said softly, I feel the same way. Commander Gincourt's voice came over the comm. We've found something interesting in Sector 7. Some kind of man-made structure that looks old but isn't dangerous. Asking for permission to look into it. Ilara smiled. The Korvax had become the initiative's best scouts, and instead of conquering, they were now focused on finding things. Go ahead, she said. Let's find out what the universe is keeping from us this time. As the fleet changed course, Ilara leaned back in her chair and felt the gentle hum of the Leviathan systems, the presence of her crew around her, and the vast network of friendships and connections that now spanned the galaxy. She remembered the night the Leviathan first came to Earth. About the fear and awe it had caused. About the choice that can't be made to deal with it with technology or force, but with simple, honest empathy. She thought about the words that had changed everything, opened a door that had been closed for 50,000 years, and shown the most important truth in the universe. Let's explore. Not, I want to use you. Not, tell me your secrets. Not do what I say, fear me, or worship me. Let's go on an adventure. Together. 3 words that had brought people and ancient ships together. 3 words that had started a renaissance in the galaxy. 3 words that showed that the best discoveries weren't things, places, or knowledge. They were connections. As they got closer to the center of the quantum nebula, the view screens filled with beauty that was impossible to describe. Crew members around her gasped, laughed, and cried in amazement. 50 ships from 100 different civilizations were behind them, all exploring together and all connected by friendship and curiosity. And at the center of it all, a human engineer and an ancient spaceship were partners in the truest sense, friends across a gulf that should have been impossible to cross. Ilara closed her eyes and felt the peace of knowing she belonged, the joy of having a purpose, and the deep satisfaction of living her life doing what she was meant to do. Thanks, she said softly to the Leviathan. Thanks for waiting. For picking me. For showing me that the universe is much bigger, stranger, and more amazing than I ever thought it could be. The Leviathan said, thank you for seeing me when no one else could. For getting what I was saying when I thought no one would. For showing that it's still possible to connect after being alone for 50,000 years. Still worth the wait. The most valuable thing in the world. The quantum nebula ahead swirled with colors that had never been seen before, mysteries that had never been explored, and wonders that were waiting to be found. Elara Vance and the Leviathan sailed into the unknown together. Looking around. Always looking around. Together.